Hey everyone, Stakey here. Thank you all again so much for your understanding and kindness and support. If you didn't see, I made a community post, I think a day or two ago, saying that I wouldn't be uploading on Friday and instead the video would be delayed to Saturday. So that's why it's being uploaded today. At this point, I know you guys won't be mad at me and you are very understanding of my situation and what's going on, which is why I like to keep you guys updated on like community posts or on Twitter as well, just to give you guys heads up on what's going on so you're not like scrambling around and asking like, oh wait, what happened this week? But yeah, I'm also, I think I have a plan. So I'm pretty confident that I won't be able to record anything during the Christmas Eve, Christmas Day week or the New Year's Eve, New Year's Day week. So I was thinking I would take next week off. So I wouldn't be uploading anything on Friday next week because, or that way I can record in advance or try and record as much as I can of the next few chapters. I'm hoping to at the very least get 2 or 3 chapters ahead. So that way I have something to upload within Christmas Eve, Christmas Day week, and New Year's Eve week. That's my plan. I hope you guys are okay with that. That's what I'm thinking of right now. If anything changes, I'll let you guys know both in the community posts and on my Twitter. If you don't know, I also have a Twitter, so you can go ahead and follow that. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. I hope you guys have had a wonderful week. I know Hanukkah started for some of my Jewish followers, and a happy Hanukkah to you guys. I hope it's going well for you. And I think that's about it. Thanks again so much for your support, guys. I don't know if you just heard that little growl. That was my throat making a weird noise. Sorry. I'm a little delirious right now, like trying to finish this recording. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this new chapter. Love you guys. Bye. The urge to throw your phone across your bedroom and into the wall was powerfully strong, as it blared in your ears like a foghorn in the early morning hours. You knew staying up late the previous night was probably a bad idea, but talking with Bakugou made you lose track of time. Not that you particularly minded, though. You slogged through the same routine every single day. Get up, go to work, come home, and sleep. Even with Bakugou here, you jumped right back into the tedium of work and familiar boredom. Everything combined made the impending road trip that much more exciting. Tomorrow, I'll have to pack tonight. Ugh, I'm so ready to get out of the city. The fact that he actually agreed to the trip made you feel like it was a good idea, not just for him, but for you as well. With your job search now underway, a change in scenery and weekend away to relax sounded divine. You sorted through your clothes before remembering with a tired groan that some important investors were coming into the office today. Rich people showing off. Ugh. As a result, the office had sent an email telling everyone to dress a little nicer to show off not only the efficiency of the work, but the quality of employees as well. Replacing your normal business casual attire with something a bit more put together, you grabbed a matching dark gray pencil skirt and jacket with a nice top to go underneath. You never wore this unless called for with a business-specific occasion because it made you feel like a stuffy librarian. Not that it looked bad, really, but it was too prim for your normal fashion sensibilities. Spending a few extra minutes on your hair and makeup, you took one last look at yourself in the bathroom mirror. "He better not say shit when I get home tonight," you grumbled, thinking of how Bakugou would react to seeing you in something abnormal compared to your usual attire. You noted that he looked more well-rested than the previous morning. Maybe your massage helped more than he let on, or maybe the idea of a weekend away from your apartment, from the localized area he was confined to with no available transportation, made the night slip by easier. Either way, you turned around to avoid staring at his handsome features and head off to work, but not before leaving your customary note, detailing that you might be home a little later than usual. When you arrived at work, you felt far less overdressed when you noticed everyone else traipsing about uncomfortably in pressed slacks and stiff dresses. After setting your things down and grabbing a mug of bitter coffee, you walked across the hall to the cubicle of one of the few people at work who didn't agitate the hell out of you. "Hey, quick question before they pull us into a stupid meeting." She turned to you with the look of someone who detested mornings more than just about anything. "Morning to you too. What's up?" "How likely is it that they'll give me the day off tomorrow if I put in the request today?" You kept your voice low to avoid any eavesdropping snoops nearby while fiddling with one of her desk toys. "Ooh, hard to tell. We don't have a deadline, I don't think, but they can deny things just because of a bad mood. Vacation?" The toy nearly dropped out of your hands, and you quickly set it back down on her desk, earning a tired squint in your direction. "I couldn't make a reservation until last night, so kinda last minute. Should I bullshit and say I'm sick? Family emergency?" She looked around before leaning in close while pretending to brush a stray hair off your shoulders. "If you do bend the truth, go with something vague or gross so they don't ask for details. You can still put in for the day off, and if they deny it at the last minute, then you give them a story. Might look suspicious, but oh well." You held back a groan. No matter what, you were leaving tomorrow, so they'd get an excuse one way or another. "All right, I'll roll with it. Thanks. Good luck today with the suits hanging around." She sat down at her desk and turned back to her computer before taking a quick glance at you from head to toe. "You too. The outfit is cute." Giving her a smile, you turned on your heel and said, "Thanks. We'll make it. Later." You steeled yourself for the day and sat down at your desk, swearing to change into more comfortable clothes as soon as you got home. While you drank bitter coffee with dregs hidden at the bottom of your mug, Bakugou slowly awoke to the soft chirping of birds outside. Luckily, he'd slept better than the previous night. That damn massage you gave in addition to that surprise trip you sprung on him both eased and excited him. He lived in the city, but it stifled him at times. Too cramped, too dense, too loud. And Bakugou Katsuki normally loved loud, bathed himself in the noise because sometimes the quiet was more deafening. Camping was something he did when time permitted, occasionally dragging Kirishima along to mollify his begging to hang out together. They skipped the comforts of a cabin, like the one you'd rented, and instead opted for roughing it in tents or left before nightfall to hop onto the Shinkansen towards home. Forests were quiet, but never too quiet. Not serene enough for his well-hidden insecurities to rise into his ears like steam with nothing else to block out the static. Bakugou welcomed the bird songs, usually invisible against the grainy bark of trees. Occasionally, he'd catch a glimpse of bright red or pale blue weaving through the branches like a glittering coin catching the sun among millions of grains of sand. The air quality in the city helped no one, himself included. Wind rustling the dancing leaves blew clean mountain air directly into his lungs, and Bakugou savored the feeling in his chest, wishing he could bottle it up and breathe it on rough nights home alone after heavy days detailed with destruction. Shaking his head clear of thoughts he tried more often than not to avoid, Bakugou stretched and yawned on the couch.
"A vacation from this vacation. Not gonna complain."
He rolled his neck while feeling the muscles twitch underneath his fingers. The tightness wasn't completely gone, but whatever you did certainly helped. Should he repay the favor at some point? Soft wasn't a word he used to describe himself, well, ever. His hands doled out punishment, explosive sweat clinging to the creases of his palms at all hours of the day and night. Rough, calloused, scarred, strong. They weren't the hands of someone who eased stress or healed pain. But you held them anyway. You didn't hesitate when he'd grabbed your hand over the weekend with an embarrassing amount of determination. You didn't flinch at the fact that, if he truly wanted to, which he didn't, he could destroy the entire apartment building with little effort with those hands of his. Maybe his week here without a villain to fight truly had tempered him because the lines of his face smoothed over at the thought. Bakugou yawned as he walked over to the kitchen counter and read your note.
"Back late, huh? Ugh, at least I know this time."
Throughout the day, he worked on making a list of things he wanted to practice over the weekend while he had the opportunity. Unfortunately, he didn't have the amenities of the training gym he and other heroes frequented. He knew that when he was able to let loose, the trees would shake from all the pent-up energy making his muscles tremble. Tired, hungry, time for vacation. You whined while walking home, tired from all the meetings and glances from suited strangers over your shoulder to peer at your screen as questions about project projections and progress lit up the bright, wide cubicle walls. You took a short detour and stopped at a convenience store on the way back for a few items you needed for the trip. Luckily, the cabin included things like pots, pans, glasses, fridge, stove, and other common household appliances. The main thing it lacked was food. Bakugou would likely grab whatever ingredients he wanted to cook with, so at least that was a detail left out of your hands. Let's see, I think I have a small cooler hiding somewhere, and some overnight bags in my closet. You were definitely the type of person to forget something if you didn't make a list beforehand. Bottled water? Check. Bug spray? Check. Energy drinks because mornings were terrible? Check. A few other items weighed down your bags as you walked out of the store and back into the crisp night air, wondering how the weekend might go. It'll be fine. A vacation away from the city, a bit of solitude, and I'll get to see Bakugou use his quirk. With a bit more pep in your step at the idea of Bakugou showing off the power of his quirk, you hurried home to pack and chow down on whatever he made for dinner. By the time you walked in the front door, you were about 5 seconds from tossing down your things and running to change into some comfy pajamas. "Hey!" you called out, too focused on balancing your phone and the bags in your hand to notice Bakugou's double take at your entrance.
What the hell are you wearing?
Your brows furrowed at his less than pleasant greeting when your hands were finally free. What's that supposed to mean? The way he just stared, knife in his hand poised dangerously close to his fingers on the cutting board, did nothing to improve your expression. Some important people were in the office today and we had to dress up a little more. Was all that came out of his mouth in response. Exhaustion and annoyance creeping under your skin as you said, "I'm going to change." Without another word, you turned on your heel and stalked into your bedroom, shutting the door with more snap than usual. Bakugou followed your retreating silhouette with his eyes and raked you from head to toe before you disappear from sight.
Ugh, how am I such a fucking idiot?
He set down the knife and was tempted to bang his head against the counter. As soon as you'd walk through the doors, his mouth moved quicker than his brain as he drank in the sight of you dressed in a way that was absolutely out of the ordinary. His mind flitted to several creative images and scenarios, distracting him long enough to blurt out something completely stupid that you definitely took the wrong way judging by your reaction. He was still actively learning how to navigate this unexpected romance path that he'd stumbled upon, and felt as though he'd selected the wrong option in a video game dialogue tree. You looked good. Professional for whatever boring shit you had at work, but good.
I can give a damn compliment.
He mumbled through gritted teeth while grabbing up the knife and continuing his dinner preparations with a bit more force than necessary. After a few minutes, he heard your door open and, rather than bounce over to him gushing about the kitchen aroma or asking about his day like usual, you sat down on the couch with a book and promptly acted as though he wasn't even there. He was so used to your smile at this point that when you weren't happy, it was painfully obvious. And this time, it was his damn fault.
I'm no coward,
he thought while he set down the knife, walked over to you, and stood squarely in front of the couch with his hands stuffed into his pockets.
Oi,
he said, finally catching your attention. You glanced up over the top of your book at him, as though waiting on bated breath to see if he'd fuck up a second time. He opened his mouth to talk, but you held up a finger before sliding your phone to the edge of the couch arm before returning to your book.
Fucking language barrier.
His tongue rolled around behind his teeth before Bakugou finally spoke.
You already know I'm shit with words. I didn't mean what I said in a bad way. I don't do well with surprises.
To emphasize his point, Bakugou leaned down and rested a hand next to your head on the cushion, effectively closing you in.
You looked good, and don't let anyone, my dumbass included, tell you otherwise.
When he saw your entire face flush crimson at his compliment, Bakugou knew he'd strung together something decent. He still felt far more confident with actions than he did with words. He could maneuver around you in familiar ways while also working on his less than tactful bluntness. He hated being surpassed in just about anything and actively worked to improve himself, though some were easier to develop than others. Too bad he was unaware his own ears were burning too. You glanced at him, then your book, then off to the side before stammering out an arigato. Satisfied with your updated reaction, Bakugou backed away and waltzed into the kitchen to finish up dinner. Your note had just said, later than usual, so his timing had been off just slightly. You attempted to continue reading your book, but the words blurred together because your brain was in a foggy vortex due to Bakugou's very Bakugou-like apology. Had he really been so surprised by your outfit that his brain had malfunctioned the tiniest bit? Maybe he was easier to fluster than you first assumed. When reading, or attempting to, didn't work, you tossed the book aside and instead busied yourself with putting up the items you bought at the store while Bakugou cooked. Water and energy drinks in the fridge, and the rest went in the bag you needed to dig for in the closet. Every once in a while, you caught Bakugou's eye and smiled to show him you were no longer moody from his comment. By the time Bakugou called that dinner was done, both of you were back to the normal rate of banter while he asked questions regarding the upcoming trip.
What time are we leaving?
He asked, before swallowing a mouthful of delicious food. You couldn't help but groan a bit. As much as it pains me to say it, we need to leave early. The sooner we leave, the sooner we can get there. He just stared at you blankly.
Early isn't a time.
You mumbled, smartass, under your breath, low enough where your phone couldn't pick it up, but continued before Bakugou grilled you on it. Check-in is at 11, so we need to leave here by 9.
That's later than you leave for work, dummy.
It's the weekend. I savor sleeping in.
Technically, tomorrow's Friday, so it's not the weekend yet.
You tried to kick him under the table, but by now he was wise to your ways and avoided the oncoming attack with ease and a smirk.
Sleep in Saturday and Sunday. Problem solved. I will also annoy the hell out of you so you don't drive us off a cliff by falling asleep on the road.
Well, you couldn't really argue with him there. Well, either that or I'll pull over and throw hands with some minivan mom who cuts me off because she doesn't know how to use her blinkers.
I kinda do want to see that.
He joked as you rolled your eyes. At least the air had been cleared completely between the two of you. I have a small cooler around here somewhere. You can put whatever you want in it for cooking. Bakugou raised an eyebrow at the change in subject.
What happened to fighting me over stuff like that? Just assuming I'll cook now?
Fine, then I'll cook.
No.
You just gaped as you watched him grin at how easy it was to annoy you, but you could shoot right back. Weren't you the one who insisted on cooking in the first place? Mr. My cooking is better, Chef Bakugou? It was easy to fall into a rhythm with him, and you stubbornly avoided thinking about the inevitable point in the future when he was no longer around. You let him wash the dishes without complaint while you scribbled on a notepad in the kitchen. You took notice of the unseen notes you wrote him in the morning and wondered what he did with them.
What are you doing?
He asked, while setting a plate in the drying rack, your phone placed in the center of the counter between you. So incredibly domestic. If I don't write it all down, I'll forget something. You looked down at your list, trying to think of things you'd need for 3 days in the woods, reminding yourself to check the weather before... I hope it doesn't rain. Bakugou paused what he was doing to slowly cut his eyes to you.
You didn't look beforehand?
Rather than answer, you sucked on your lip, avoided eye contact, and slid your phone away from him to check the weather app for the area you'd be staying in. Okay. Oh, nice. Sunny all the way through the weekend. You held up your phone screen to him, the app displaying small animated suns for Friday through Monday.
Lucky.
He scoffed before continuing with the dishes. Close one, you thought. Once you finished your list, you headed back into your room to dig through your closet for your overnight bags. Where are you? There! 2 bags, neither matching each other in the slightest, were pulled from your closet. You'd give Bakugou the smaller one since he had fewer things to pack, and you almost always overpacked more than you needed. Digging through the side pockets and pouches to make sure they were empty and clean, you pulled out an old toothbrush, a sock, and a dryer sheet that had 0 fresh linen scent left in it. You tossed the dryer sheet and toothbrush away since it was definitely full of years-old germs, tossed the matless sock in your drawer, and walked out to give Bakugou the small black overnight bag. Here, you called out, catching his attention in the kitchen. Have fun packing! Setting the bag on the couch, you retreated back into your room to pack your own things. Jeans, sweaters, pajamas, socks, a jacket. Nothing out of the ordinary went into your bag. While searching for underwear, you came across the matching set that came in the mail the day before. You glanced at your overnight bag before looking back down at the contents of your drawer with a nervous groan. Considering we haven't even talked about it. As romantically appetizing as it was to consider the possibilities in a secluded cabin in the woods, you shut the drawer, leaving the items safely hidden away. Honestly, Bakugou's forward confession that he thought you looked good earlier still echoed in your ears. You'd sulked in your room after his little, "What the hell are you wearing?" comment, feeling bad about yourself and the way you looked in your work attire, but he wouldn't have indulged in that vigorous makeout session with you last night if he didn't find you attractive, right? And he apologized. Well, sort of. Good enough coming from him. Did you really break his brain when you'd walk through the door? Surprises, huh? I guess he likes to be in the know about stuff. Makes sense considering the circumstances. While you contemplated in your bedroom, Bakugou had already finished packing. It wasn't as though he had a lot anyway. Was he getting tired of wearing the same damn clothes every day? Yes, absolutely. Was he about to complain about it when you went out of your way to take him on a fucking vacation for him specifically? To be able to use his quirk without getting caught? Absolutely not. He turned his head when he heard you come out of your room as he relaxed on the couch that would not be his bed for the next 2 nights. You smiled at him before going around to dig in the closet by the front door, pulling out various boxes and items stored away out of sight.
"What are you doing besides making a mess of your own apartment?"
he asked, now leaning against the wall behind you. Looking for the cooler I mentioned earlier. It's here somewhere. Bakugou pointed over his shoulder towards the closet he stored his clothes in.
"It's in that one. I open it every day."
I knew that. You played it off nonchalantly as you walked past him and looked around in the other closet before pulling away some old towels with holes in them to reveal a small off-white cooler. Let me wash it. It's a bit dusty. I don't go on too many trips, as you can probably tell.
"Why not?"
he asked as you brought the cooler over to the sink and set your phone on the counter. The way you paused and avoided eye contact didn't escape him. I mean, trips by yourself can get boring. I have friends I could go with, sure, but we all have different jobs and schedules. Some have their own families and obligations. It's hard to coordinate as I've gotten older. It happens, you explained, shrugging it off as the water warmed under your hand. To be frank, that was something he rarely had to deal with back home. It was usually the other way around. His friends dragged him out whenever their schedules lined up. He worked with his old classmates and even heroes from other schools often, saw them frequently, and felt disgustingly informed about their personal lives whether he wanted to or not. A more morbid explanation was that not everyone in his profession lived long and happy lives. They needed to stay close, to watch each other's backs, to keep in touch because they never knew when the unexpected tragedy might arise. The mood had turned sour, and Bakugou didn't want to end the evening before the trip on a depressing note. You seemed to read his mind. Sorry. Didn't mean to be a downer or anything. I should be excited about tomorrow, right? He could tell you were trying to shake off the discomfort and determined you didn't have to do so alone. Spotting the novel you'd been reading earlier, he picked it up and wagged it in the air.
You have your nose buried in this all the time. What's it about?
Almost immediately, you perked up and he knew he'd asked the right question. It'll probably sound super nerdy, but whatever, I think it's really good. Pausing in your scrubbing, you gestured wildly while explaining the plot and characters, sucked into an attempt at describing things that did the story justice. Wars raging between factions, royal divides, traitors, risky romance, all wrapped up with the type of fantastical magic he found in video games. It didn't sound terribly boring, but he wanted to push your buttons, just a bit.
Sounds like quirks,
he stated after you'd presumably finished. No, it's magic. You rolled your eyes and he knew you'd fallen into his trap.
Magic is just science that hasn't been explained yet.
A mock gasp came out of your mouth. It's a novel that you haven't read. Are you really trying to explain it to me?
But I'm right.
Bakugou dealt in facts and evidence, often piecing things together until he came to an indisputable conclusion.
Quirks are just based on science and physiology, not magic.
But this isn't a book about quirks. It's magic. He grinned at how easily frustrated you got during these stupid arguments. You'd also explained uses of technology in the plot as well, so he decided to sprinkle that into his argument too.
Didn't you mention advanced technology and mechanics?
So what, you saying magic and science can't coexist? This entire line of questioning was so incredibly stupid, but also too entertaining to back down from.
Sounds like bullshit.
Suddenly, your face lit up with a sly smile, and he narrowed his eyes. Ah, but you're familiar with Marvel. You saying Doctor Strange and Iron Man can't exist in the same universe? Tell that to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Absolutely fucking ridiculous.
He did not have a snappy comeback for that one because you were right, and it made his eye twitch. There was probably some meticulous explanation for Doctor Strange's powers, but he wasn't familiar enough with the source material to counter you properly. You just laughed at his apparent loss and went back to rinsing out the cooler. Don't try and argue with me about this kind of stuff, because I'll definitely win.
Really want to be proud of that fact, nerd.
With your chin held high in victory despite his teasing, Bakugou felt simultaneously annoyed and amused. You finished drying out the cooler and said, I am pretty smart, so yeah, deal with it. Quickly sticking your tongue out at him, you set the cooler by the fridge, but not before he bopped you on the head with your own book. Hey! Too bad for you, his reflexes were faster than yours, and he grabbed your wrist with his free hand while you tried to poke him in the ribs, probably in some pitiful attempt to tickle him since you now knew his weak spot.
Watch it,
he growled. Sore loser, you retorted, meeting his glare with one of your own. The look you gave him sent shivers down his spine, and the image of you in that damn outfit from earlier flitted to the front of his brain. It was so tempting to kiss that smirk right off your face, but that would have been a reward for your behavior, wouldn't it? Tempting though it was to give in, Bakugou instead let you go and flicked you on the nose. He swore disappointment darted across your eyes.
Maybe I just let you win.
At that, you barked out a laugh. And here I thought you hated lying. Just admit I won. He just crossed his arms and turned away in mock agitation. The only reason he refused to admit you were right on something so trivial was because he thought you looked cute while arguing with him. Smug bastard. You needed to figure out a way to knock him down a peg or two. Well, too bad for you. I'm stubborn too. I know I'm right whether you think so or not. You quickly grabbed your phone, walked to the pantry, stuffed a cookie in your mouth, and turned your back to him. If there was one thing you knew for sure about Bakugou Katsuki, besides the fact that he hated losing, was that he detested being ignored. You felt his eyes on you as you plopped back down onto the couch and scrolled through your phone.
Oi, mushi suru na.
It took a surprising amount of resolve to keep from laughing, taking a stab in the dark that he was complaining about your behavior. Too bad for him. Did I hear something? No. How odd. You held a hand up to cup your ear and heard him grumbling behind you as your attention remained on your phone. It wasn't long before you felt the couch dip beside you and you covered your silent smirk with your book. He'd taken the bait. What you didn't expect was for him to reach over and tickle you, obviously far more starved for attention than you'd assumed. Almost immediately, you curled up into a ball and started laughing while trying fruitfully to push him away. Oh my god, no!
Yes.
His tone was mocking, laced with a side of devious. Your attempt at backing away worked a little too well, because you actually fell right off the couch and onto the floor with a yelp. Ow, you brat! You cried, rolling around the floor in an attempt to get control of your laughter in between groans and wiping away fake tears. Bakugou barked out his own laugh, and any other time you'd savor the sound, but not while he was the reason you were so rudely introduced to the floor.
You okay?
He asked, standing up to extend a hand to you. You figured he'd gotten the revenge out of his system, so you let him pull you up to your feet, shaking your hair out of your face in the process. Snatching up your phone, you turned on the app and pointed in his face. I knew it!
Huh? Knew what?
You started, hate being ignored. His eye twitched and you knew he'd been caught.
Don't be dense. That's not true. I'm here all damn day by myself, so sue me if I actually want to talk every once in a while.
You couldn't help but suppress a giggle at his defensiveness. Fair point, but I'm still right for the second time tonight. You didn't last 5 seconds without my undivided attention. I mean, I know I'm really great and amazing, so it's totally understandable. Smirking, he said,
Someone thinks highly of themselves.
Oh, I know you do. You didn't miss a beat, caught up in the light-hearted banter before the long trip the next day. Bakugou honestly couldn't deny that he thought highly of himself. He'd worked hard for his position, for his rank, for his status, so he had every right to be proud of what he'd accomplished. Your joking didn't diminish that fact.
You really are a mess.
Shaking his head, Bakugou headed into the kitchen to grab what he wanted to take for the weekend. This place had pots and pans and utensils, right? So he just needed to plan around that. Nothing too complicated or that relied on specific tools.
Enough for 3 days,
he thought, while mentally preparing recipes in his head. He'd leave enough for breakfast the next morning, but otherwise the rest could go in the cooler. What are you going to make? He heard you ask from behind him. Now who was the one who couldn't be left alone?
You'll find out tomorrow.
It really felt hypocritical to expect patience from someone else when he was one of the most impatient people he knew. You tried to peek around his shoulder, but he shut the fridge to block you from peeking. In response, you pouted for all of 1 second before tapping your phone against your chin with a smile. I guess it's always a surprise when I get home from work, and it's never bad, so I won't complain. The way you tossed around compliments like candy on Halloween threw Bakugou off his guard on more than one occasion. Praise rained down on him from news outlets, fans, and even his friends and family. When he was younger, he devoured it hungrily, let it nourish his drive to succeed and win at all costs. But as he got older and gained a wiser understanding of himself and his emotions, Bakugou learned, sometimes the hard way, that just because people said he was the best didn't mean he was actually the best. As he continued to pack in secret, you decided to leave him alone to look back over your list. You stuffed the dictionary and your novel in your bag, figuring you could read while Bakugou jumped around with whatever training he wanted to do. It seemed like everything was in order, aside from the toiletries you'd grab in the morning after your shower. You checked the time and realized it wasn't even that late, and you weren't exceptionally tired, but going to bed at a decent hour with the long drive ahead wasn't the worst idea. I guess I should go to sleep soon so I'm not dead in the morning. Bakugou stuffed the cooler in the fridge once it was full and turned to you.
Go to sleep, or you'll crash before we even get there.
I'm not tired, though. I always have trouble sleeping when I'm excited about something. Almost sulking, you padded over to the couch and plopped down before patting the space next to you. Tell me a boring story to make me sleepy. He just stared at you and scoffed.
You're joking, right?
Without missing a beat, you just said, Nope, 30 minutes is all I'm asking for and then I'll go to bed. Bakugou stood there with his arms crossed just staring at you. At first, you really thought he'd say no and make you go to sleep. But sure enough, once again, he proved that your attention was worth his time and effort when he walked over and sat next to you on the couch with an almost indiscernible huff.
You realize I have no boring stories, right?
He stated smugly. At that, you just shrugged, glad for any chance to hear about the life he led in a world you'd never get to see or experience for yourself. How tragic. Now, you said, gesturing with your hand as if introducing him on stage, ready for a performance. Don't hold back. True to his word, Bakugou's life was far from boring. He told you another heroic story similar to the other he told you last week. Of course, he was the star and executed the plans perfectly. For added emphasis, he popped off his quirk a few times. The way his eyes glistened and hands twitched in probable excitement to the coming weekend didn't escape your attention. By the time he was done, you'd lost track of time, and it was truly time for bed. You pictured staying up and talking to him all night, exchanging stories and joking as though it was as natural as breathing. Maybe later, but not now.
Go to sleep. No damn arguing this time.
You yawned, your eyes watering the tiniest bit as you stood up from the couch. Wasn't planning on it. Thanks for staying up with me. You really are good company, Bakugou. Just to tease him one last time, you winked before turning around and heading into the bathroom, missing how his ears turned the lightest shade of pink. When you came out, you noticed Bakugou leaned up against the arm of the couch, almost expectantly. See you in the morning. Oyasuminasai? Your voice ticked up a notch with doubt that you'd pronounced it wrong, but to your surprise, he just nodded. As you smiled sleepily and attempted to walk away, however, Bakugou grabbed you by the wrist to stop you in your tracks, his eyes glistening in a way that told you he'd made a split-second decision that he wasn't about to walk away from. He yanked you forward and brought your lips to his in a chaste kiss. A soft brush of skin-to-skin contact that, without experiencing it for yourself, you never would have guessed he was capable of. By the time you registered what was happening, Bakugou was already pulling away, his rose-colored eyes tender yet steady, and his cheeks blushing slightly. He truly was adorable with these small gestures of affection.
Good night.
He mirrored in your own language. It was the first time he'd initiated a goodnight kiss, and you couldn't help but feel a bit dazed as he let go of your wrist, his calloused fingers brushing against the line of your pulse. Tempting though it was to remain frozen and stare at him all night, you knew you had to get some sleep. Reluctantly, you tore yourself away from him and headed into your room with one last fleeting glance his way before disappearing behind your bedroom door. He'd never admit so aloud. Well, maybe he would, who fucking knew at this point, but he really did savor your undivided attention and catching you off guard. Bakugou thought he knew just about everything he needed to know at this point when it came to self-analysis. Years worth of swallowing his pride and owning up to his own shortcomings culminating in how he was today. Mild nervousness still bubbled up at what the next 2.5 weeks would hold, but glancing up at your door, he considered how you'd made every effort, every sacrifice up to this point for his own damn comfort. So what did he truly have to be scared of? As he laid down to sleep on the couch, mind racing with what the weekend might hold, he silently said goodbye to your couch for the next 3 days. A change in scenery, one that he actually consented to this time, would hopefully provide just what he needed to relax and clear his head. Replacing your normal business attire casual attire. What? Usually invisible against the grainy bark of trees. Occasionally, he'd...
Balls.
exhaustion and annoyance creeping their closet before pulling away some old towels with holes in them to reveal a small off-white cooler. Meh. It's a long day.